Hey, what's up, guys? We're talking about area of circles today, so let's get right to it. Um, so area is how much something covers, right? The amount of square units that something covers. So how did we get the formula that we're going to be using today? So if we take a circle and we cut it into equal parts and rearrange it, it looks like a parallelogram, right? And so let's label what we see between the circle and the parallelogram. So I know that halfway to the center is the radius, and I know that around the edge, that's my circumference, right? Okay, so where do we see that on our new shape when we rearrange those pie slices? Well, the radius is still this dashed line over here. And now we see that the circumference, we have part of it on the bottom and part of it on the top. So this bottom part is half of the circumference, right? So looking at that, seeing that there's this kind of relationship between it. And so if we do the area of the parallelogram, well, area of a parallelogram is length times width. Okay, so here though, our length is 1/2 the circumference and the width is the radius. Okay, and so now we're going to use that to our advantage here and just kind of see how this works. So if I were to take the area formula and plug in for length my 1/2 the circumference and width radius, so 1/2 circumference times the radius, right? And then I'm like, well, how is that useful, right? So let's do what we already know. We know circumference. I can replace it with either pi times diameter or 2 pi radius. Since I already have radius, let's see what happens if I plug that one in. So 2 pi radius times the radius, right? So I just substitute circumference. Okay, so I can simplify all of this. 1/2 times 2 equals 1. Okay, so then I have pi. R times r is the same as saying r squared. That is our formula for area of a circle. Pi times the radius squared. Okay, and so we just looked at a little bit of background information of how that comes to be. All right, so area is the surface measurement of two-dimensional figure. It's the square units that cover a circle. Okay, we're going to use the formula that we just looked at. Area equals pi times radius squared, where radius squared is equal to r times r. Okay, so we might have to keep that in mind when we work with this formula. It is on your star chart, so you don't have to memorize, but you do need to know what it means. So you need to know what A represents and what the R represents. All right, so here we go. Let's put this to use. So with area, I need the radius. Okay, not diameter. Everything has to be with radius because it's area equals pi times radius squared. All right, so in my first picture here, we already have the radius. Sweet. Our formula. I always write my formula because it trains my brain what I'm looking for. Okay, and we're going to plug in our values. So we get area equals pi times 3 squared. Okay, and so in terms of pi, 3 squared is 9. So that's 9 pi. And then I could plug in 3.14 all day. Today we're going to be using pi as 3.14. Okay, so I plug that in. I can use Desmos at that point. I'm not going to write that A there since it says area right here. So my area is going to come out to 28.26. And then we want the unit is inches. And since this is area, it's square inches. And we do that with a little exponent there. Okay, so that's how you do area. Write what the formula is and then plug in what you know, solve for what you don't. Okay, all right, so on this next circle, 10 centimeters is the diameter. Do we want diameter for area? No, we need the radius. Remember, radius is halfway across, right? So that's going to be 5 centimeters. All right, so my formula is area equals pi times radius squared. Now I just start plugging in. So I'm going to use, actually, I jump ahead of myself. All right, area equals pi times radius is 5 squared. So in terms of pi, that's going to be area equals 25 times pi. But now for solving, I'm going to use the 3.14, plug that into Desmos, and we get 78.5 centimeters squared, square centimeters, right? Are you feeling this? Just plug in, identify what you know, and then find what you don't. All right, on our last circle, 6 meters, this is going to be our radius because it goes halfway to the center, right? So area equals pi times radius squared. I have the radius, so area equals pi times 6 squared. In terms of pi, that's going to be 36 pi. And then we plug in 3.14, go to Desmos, and we're going to end up with 113.04 square meters. Okay, so that's the basics of this formula. We're going to look at how we can do it a little bit different sometimes. Remember, it's always what do I know, what letter is that in my formula, and then solve for what you don't know. Okay, so let's look. We have at these next problems here. A circle has an area of 78.5 square inches. So my area is 78.5. And it says, what is the radius? So that's what I don't know. So we have to figure it out. Okay, so this time my formula is going to look a little bit different. So I'm going to still have area equals pi r squared. I always write that to train my brain what the pieces are that I need. All right, this time I have I have the area. So I'm going to replace area with 78.5. I'm going to go ahead and put 3.14 for pi times r squared. I don't know r, so it has to stay. So I'm solving for r. So I want to isolate that. I want to make the coefficient 1. So I divide by 3.14. I throw that into Desmos, and I'm going to get 25 equals r squared, because this goes to 1, right? So I'm at r squared, but that's not the radius. That's the radius squared. So I need to think what number times itself equals 25. And when we ask that question, we take the square root, and we get 5. And so our radius is actually 5 inches. Sorry, not square units, 5 inches. Okay, so if I had my circle, this would be 5 inches. Okay, all right, so just look at your formula, what is given, and then solve for the unknown part. Okay, so we have a circular sprinkler system is installed and waters an area of 28.26 square yards. What's the radius of the circle? So it gives me the area, 28.26. I have to find the radius. So we're going to use our formula, area equals pi r squared, and then substitute what I know. Area is the 28.26. That goes where A is. Pi, we're going to use 3.14. Radius is unknown still. Divide by 3.14. And that's going to get you 9 equals r squared. Remember, we're not at r just yet. We're going to take the square root. And so our radius is actually 3 yards. So in this circle, the radius is going to be 3 yards. Okay, so you can solve for the radius. And then if I wanted diameter, wouldn't I just double the radius, right? So lots of information you can find, just making sure you plug in the right way. So let's read some situations, make sure you can identify, am I finding area or am I finding circumference, right? Area is the amount covered, circumference is the distance around, okay? So I have fencing around a circular garden. That would be circumference because that's going around the outside. The amount of frosting needed to cover a cookie, coverage is area, okay? The amount of crust needed to cover a pie, Again, coverage is area. And the distance traveled in one lap around a circular track. We're going around it this time. That's circumference. So being able to read and identify what information you're actually looking for is a huge key to success. That's what you do in real life, right? You have to be able to know what your scenario is asking for. All right, let's do one more problem together. So we're going to use the image at the right. So we have our two circles here, 1 and 2. It says 2 different trees are being planted in an outdoor garden. Each tree requires a specific amount of space for the roots to grow. How much more space will tree 2 require? All right, so let's just kind of sort our brains here. So what I know, well, let's see. I know about tree 1. The diameter is 16. The radius is 8. And I know that tree 2, the radius is 9. Okay, so that's what I know. What I need to know is how much more space for tree 2, which really is asking me if I'm talking about space, I'm talking about area. Okay, so I need to know how much more area is needed. All right, so let's figure this out, our plan. I'm going to need to know, well, how much area for tree 1 and how much area for tree 2, right? Because if I want to know how much more, first I need to know how much for each one. All right, so area equals pi times r, radius squared. So I'm going to look for tree 1. The radius was 8. So area equals, and I'm going to go ahead swap pi with 3.14 times 8 squared. And I plug that into Desmos, and I'm going to get area equals 200.96. Okay, so that's how much tree 1 will need. That's going to be square feet. And then area, I go ahead and do the same thing for area of tree 2. Okay, so area equals, replace pi with 3.14. Radius is 9 for tree 2 squared. Plug it into Desmos, and you're going to get 254.34. And again, that's square feet. And now I have all the information I need to figure out this solution. So I take my two areas and I subtract them. So 254.34 minus 200.96. And we subtract that, we're going to get 53.38 feet squared. And so that's our answer. Tree 2 needs 53.38 square feet more than tree 1. Okay, so the big thing with area and circumference is knowing, 1, what am I looking for? Then look at your formula. What is given? What is unknown? Plug in what you know, solve for what you don't. Remember, if you're solving for radius, you're going to have to take the square root at the end. All right, go try it.